So imagine being designated by the cosmos as like the ultimate healer.
Right, the literal 100 healers.
Exactly. You possess this intuitive, almost architectural understanding of how to fix broken systems or broken minds, even broken bodies.
But there is a catch.
A massive one. The cruel, overarching paradox of your existence is that when you yourself fall ill, your sickness is so convoluted, so deeply layered, that it metaphorically requires 100 separate doctors just to figure out what is actually wrong with you.
It is a staggering contradiction, honestly.
It really is. I mean, you are the ultimate physician and simultaneously the medical world's most impossible patient.
And that really speaks to the immense crushing weight of the energy we're looking at today.
It does, yeah. So as we settle into our usual regulars corner here, listening to the hum of the cafe and the clinking of porcelain, we are plunging straight into the earthly psychological reality of a very specific celestial architecture.
Shatabhisha.
Right. For you listening, our mission today is to dissect Shatabhisha, which is famously known as the veiling star.
And we really want to look past the cosmic theory today.
Exactly. We're looking directly into the minds of the people who carry this placement in Vedic astrology. But before we get into the heavy, complex ways this actually manifests, I need to stop and ask a foundational question.
Sure, okay.
We're using terms like nakshatra and veiling star. And if we're going to understand the psychology, we kind of have to understand the mechanics first. What exactly is a nakshatra, and, well, why does this specific one act like a veil?
That is the perfect place to start. So a nakshatra is essentially a lunar mansion.
Okay.
While Western astrology focuses heavily on the solar signs,
Yeah.
The 30-degree slices of the sky, the sun travels through Vedic astrology, looks at the 27 smaller, highly specific sectors that the moon transits.
Got it. So it's much more granular.
Highly granular. If your sun sign is your basic operating system, the nakshatra is the deep subconscious psychological software running in the background.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, and the software of Shatabhisha operates under a really fascinating, highly pressurized planetary dynamic.
Pressurized how? Because, I mean, when I think of Aquarius, where the star is located, I usually think of the water bearer, right?
Humanitarian, social.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a bit eccentric. I don't necessarily think of immense crushing pressure.
Well, that is the surface level illusion.
Oh, really?
To understand the pressure, you have to look at the ruling forces of this specific slice of Aquarius. Shatabhisha sits entirely within the sign of Aquarius, which, in the traditional system, is ruled by Saturn.
Okay, Saturn, the taskmaster.
Right. Saturn enforces this cold, restrictive, isolating discipline. It builds walls. But the star itself, the nakshatra of Shatabhisha, is governed by a lunar node called Rahu.
Okay, walk me through Rahu. What does that actually mean in a psychological sense?
Rahu represents an insatiable, boundary-breaking, highly unconventional hunger.
Hunger.
Yes. In Vedic mythology, Rahu is the disembodied head of a demon, meaning it has this endless appetite, but no stomach to ever feel full.
Oh, wow. That sounds exhausting.
It is. It's obsessive, countercultural, and desperate to penetrate illusions. So you have Rahu's obsessive, disruptive hunger colliding directly with Saturn's heavy, isolating walls.
That sounds like a recipe for a massive internal crisis.
It is. The result of this collision is a psychological state we call the midnight sun.
The midnight sun. That implies what? Light in the middle of total darkness?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is the intellect turned entirely inward.
Okay. How does that differ from normal intellect?
Well, while most people project their intelligence outward into the world, the Shatabhisha native points their intellect into the darkest parts of their own psyche, or, the darkest parts of society.
They're looking for what's hidden.
Exactly. It's a dark divinity that sees what remains hidden from the light, trying to solve the most complex, agonizing riddles of existence.
I'm trying to visualize how this actually plays out in a person's day-to-day behavior, because immediately intellect turned inward and Saturn's walls, well, that implies intense secrecy.
Very intense. The texts call it the veiling star for a reason.
Right. They set up massive boundaries. If we bring this down to Earth, I'm picturing their psychological perimeter as like a bouncer at an incredibly exclusive underground club.
A bouncer is a very fitting archetype for Saturn. How does this club operate, in your mind?
Well, you only get in if you know the secret knock, right? The bouncer is rigorously checking IDs, patting people down, looking for literally any sign of inauthenticity.
Absolutely. No fake IDs allowed.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is what I'm gathering from the mechanics you just explained. If you actually manage to get past that bouncer and step inside, you realize the VIP room isn't hosting some wild exclusive party.
No, it's not.
It's surprisingly quiet. It's just them, sitting alone in the dark. They aren't hiding a massive social life. They're just guarding their own absolute solitude.
That captures the psychological defense mechanism perfectly. The primary symbol of Shatabhisha isn't a weapon or an animal.
What is it?
It is simply an empty circle.
Just a circle.
Yes, it's a containment zone. Saturn provides the heavy walls of that club, and Rahu is inside, obsessively researching, analyzing, and questioning everything.
Like rogue detectives.
Exactly. They are the rogue detectives and scientists of the zodiac. But because their internal world is so heavily guarded, they inhabit a psychic landscape of profound isolation.
Which they need, right?
They do. They use that cloaking mechanism to survive in a society that often fundamentally rejects their unconventional, intense temperament.
But wait, if they keep everyone out of the club, if they are constantly analyzing the darkness inside that empty circle, what happens when they are left entirely alone with their own systems?
It gets complicated.
Because human beings aren't built for total isolation. And the source material points to this massive zero or hero cycle. Where does the zero come from?
Well, the empty circle doesn't just represent a boundary. It represents the void itself, the absolute zero. In the earthly layer, these natives have a clinical zeroing effect, because Rahu's obsession eventually shatters even Saturn's structures. They have a marked, undeniable tendency to reduce areas of their life to nothing.
Wait, like what areas?
We're talking about their wealth, their family structures, their relationships, or their careers. They will often reduce these things to absolute zero before the hero phase, the rebuilding phase, can even begin.
So it's a total blank slate.
It is a total tabula rasa. They experience significant reversals of fortune where they lose their footing completely.
So they just self-sabotage. They just like burn their own lives to the ground because they're bored.
No.
Yeah.
It's rarely conscious self-sabotage. It is an energetic necessity.
Well, so.
The mythological blueprint for this is Varuna, the presiding deity of this star. Varuna was once the supreme sky god, an incredible, powerful figure who maintained cosmic order.
Right.
But he experienced a massive fall from grace. He failed to protect the cosmic waters from the drought dragon Vritra.
And what happened to him?
As penance, he was stripped of his celestial title and banished to the dark depths of the ocean. He was reduced to zero.
He went from ruling the sky to basically sitting at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Exactly. But down in the dark, in that absolute void, he didn't die.
He adapted.
He rebounded. He became the Lord of the Seas, gathering the hidden, unseen riches of the deep. That is the Shatabhisha trajectory.
Oh.
They have to survive the total collapse of their ego and their external structures to find their true foundational wealth.
I think I get it. It's not destruction for the sake of destruction. It's a purge.
Precisely.
I'm thinking about when my smartphone gets fatally corrupted. At first, you try to just delete a few apps, maybe restart it.
Quick fixes.
But if the operating system itself is deeply infected, none of that works. You have to go into the settings and hit the factory reset button, and it is terrifying. You hesitate because you know you're going to lose all your data, your photos, your messages. You literally lose everything. But hitting that terrifying zero is the only way to purge the glitches so the operating system can rebuild from scratch.
That is a highly accurate modern equivalent. The Shatabhisha native is constantly hitting the factory reset on their own life when they sense an inherent flaw in the system.
But as I pointed out earlier, human beings aren't really built for that level of isolation and constant resetting. Surviving that void has to have a severe psychological cost.
It absolutely does.
Because when you are staring into an empty circle, the silence gets deafening.
Deafening and terrifying. Which brings us to one of the most dangerous psychological manifestations of this nakshatra, severe addiction and escapism.
That makes sense.
You have to remember, the Shatabhisha mind is incredibly active. It is constantly analyzing, constantly seeing through the hypocrisy, the lies, and the fragile illusions of the world around them.
They see everything.
Right. And that hypervigilance makes their own head a very unsettling place to live. To escape that overwhelming inner emptiness and the relentless, agonizing noise of their own intellect, the risk of addictive tendencies skyrockets.
So they self-medicate.
They frequently turn to alcohol, substances, or even obsessive isolating work routines just to numb the processor.
They're desperately searching for an off switch.
But it is deeper than just an off switch. Let's look at the mythology again. Varuna's spouse, Varunani, is the mythological guardian of the divine liquor, Sura.
Okay.
When the Shatabhisha native turns to intoxication, they aren't just seeking a cheap thrill or a quick, empty high like a college student at a party.
What are they looking for?
They are desperately searching for soma, a mystical sensory bridge to the infinite. They're trying to find a chemical or experiential way to quiet a terrifyingly active mind, hoping to experience the vastness of the universe without the crushing weight of Saturn's reality dragging them down.
Man, coping with that heavy emptiness, that constant awareness of the void, it requires a serious defense mechanism in everyday social situations. Because you can't just walk into a grocery store carrying the weight of the cosmic void. You often see people with heavy Shatabhisha placements adopting a touch of that dry, charming irony, a sort of classic Viennese schmeh, just to mask their profound melancholy from the rest of the world.
Yes, humor as a shield.
Exactly. They throw up a smokescreen of dark humor, making you laugh so you don't realize how deeply isolated they actually feel.
The smokescreen is an essential part of the veil. It is how they pass as normal. But we have to be careful not to paint this with too broad a brush.
Why is that?
Because how that veil operates and how that cycle of emptiness and resetting manifests changes dramatically depending on the fine structure of the star. It is not all doom and gloom for every native.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Shatabhisha is divided into 4 quarters, or padas.
Right, let's break down that fine structure because I was honestly starting to wonder how anyone survives this. What is a pada and how does it shift this energy?
Well, a pada is a microscopic division of the nakshatra. If the nakshatra is the software program, the padas are the specific subfolders.
Nice.
In Vedic astrology, each of these 4 quarters falls into a different navamsa sign. The navamsa is the harmonic chart, often called the chart of the soul. It shows the microscopic underlying reality of a placement.
Okay, so where do we start?
We start with the first pada, which falls in the Sagittarius navamsa.
Now, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. That is a massive shift from Saturn and Rahu. Jupiter is like expansion, optimism, and belief. How does that interact with the isolation of the empty circle?
It creates a really fascinating friction.
Yeah.
This is the philanthropic, visionary stage of Shatabhisha.
Okay.
The intellect here is still turned inward to solve complex problems, but the goal is expansive and optimistic. These are the healers of the world who want to cure society's ills on a macro level. They use their understanding of the void to try and save people from it.
That sounds incredibly noble. What's the catch?
The danger here is that they get completely carried away by their own high ideals. Jupiter's influence can make them fanatic about a cause.
Ah, I see.
In their rush of Jupiterian zeal to save humanity, they lose their Saturnian grounding. They become so focused on the overarching philosophy of healing that they overlook the practical, earthly details.
Right. They're so busy staring at the horizon trying to save the world that they literally trip over the coffee table in their own living room.
Exactly. Now compare that to the second pada. This quarter falls in the Capricorn Navamsa. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn.
Oh, wow. So you have the main sign of Aquarius ruled by Saturn, and now the microscopic Navamsa sign of Capricorn also ruled by Saturn. That is a double dose of the taskmaster.
Yes, it is. This is where the energy becomes intensely material, practical, and highly ambitious. Here, the theme of isolation is at its absolute peak.
So they just lock the doors.
They are organizing, structuring, and building complex systems, but they insist on doing it entirely alone. The risk here is excessive rigidity. The coldness that comes from total material focus can make them incredibly difficult to reach emotionally.
I can picture this archetype perfectly. It's that dedicated, lovable grumbler.
Yes.
They bury themselves in highly structured, secluded work. They constantly complain about how broken the state of the world is, but paradoxically, they're the ones working until midnight in the laboratory trying to fix it. They complain while they cure.
A very apt description. Then we move to the third pada, which falls in the Aquarius Navamsa.
So the main sign is Aquarius and the Navamsa sign is Aquarius. What happens when a placement doubles up like that?
In Vedic astrology, this is called a Vargatama position. It means the planet occupies the same sign in both the physical chart and the soul level chart.
Okay, so it amplifies it.
It acts as a massive cosmic anchor, making the placement extraordinarily strong and pure. This pada produces the eccentric reformer, the mad genius.
The mad genius, I like that.
What's fascinating here is that despite their entirely rebellious, futuristic, and countercultural nature, which is driven by Rahu, They somehow manage to achieve massive success on the material plane. They don't just study systems, they create entirely new genres of thought.
Right. They're the ones who refuse to play by the rules, but their ideas are so undeniable that the world ends up adapting to their rules anyway.
Precisely.
And the final quarter.
The fourth pada falls in the Pisces Navamsa, ruled again by Jupiter. But Pisces represents the cosmic ocean. It is the imaginative, expansive realm of Maya.
Maya meaning illusion.
Yes, the veil of material reality itself. In this pada, the strict boundaries of the empty circle begin to dissolve entirely into the water.
So the walls come down.
Exactly. This was incredible potential for visual media, filmmaking, photography, and the arts obid, basically anything that manipulates light and illusion.
But there's a downside.
A severe one. Because the boundaries are so porous, this keda carries the absolute highest risk of escapism, hallucination, and severe substance addiction. The urge to drown in the cosmic waters, to completely leave the painful earthly plane behind, is immense here.
Okay, I need to take a step back and look at the practical reality of this.
You're
We have these philanthropic visionaries, these isolated grumblers, and these mad geniuses manipulating illusion. But at the end of the day, they still have to pay rent. They have to earn a living in the real world. Where do people who operate entirely on the fringes of societal systems staring into the void actually work?
Well, they work by managing the unseen. Because they are governed by the cosmic waters of Varuna and the technological boundary-breaking disruption of Rahu, their careers are highly specific to hidden, complex, or discarded systems.
Like what?
First, you see them heavily represented in advanced technology, specifically aerospace, aviation, and radar.
Wait, walk me through the mechanics of that. Why radar?
Radar and X-ray technology are the perfect physical manifestations of Shatabhisha energy.
How so?
Well, what does radar do? It uses invisible frequencies to see what is hidden in the dark sky. What does an X-ray do? It pierces the veil of the skin to see the hidden structures of the bone. They're literally utilizing invisible waves to decode secrets.
Oh, that makes total sense. They are the watchers piercing the veil. But what about the healing side? We started this deep dive talking about the 100 healers. How does a person prone to isolation and addiction actually heal anyone?
By understanding the root of the illness better than anyone else, they excel in deep mysticism like astrology and psychological decoding because they know how to set traps for the hidden truth.
But not in a standard hospital, I assume.
No, they don't do well with standard bureaucratic hospital environments. They lean toward alternative, holistic, and unconventional therapies. The ancient texts also refer to Shatabhisha as the 100 flowers.
100 flowers. That sounds unusually delicate for a star ruled by a demon and a taskmaster.
It refers to vibrational healing. There is a very specific archetypal connection here to Dr. Edward Bach, the pioneer of Bach flower essences, who had prominent Shatabhisha placements.
Oh, fascinating.
The Shatabhisha healer doesn't just want to give you a pill to suppress a cough. They want to extract subtle, vibrational, complex patterns from nature to treat the root informational glitch in your nervous system. They are treating the software, not just the hardware.
Wow. They aren't treating the symptom, they are reprogramming the trauma.
Exactly.
And what about the physical earthly systems? Not everyone is an astrologer or a radar technician.
True. And this is where we see their connection to the hidden underbelly of society. They manage society's discarded infrastructure, waste management, recycling, sanitation, and underground transit systems.
Really?
Yes. They take the things society has discarded, hidden away, or deemed as toxic, and they re-engineer them.
There is a beautiful poetic symmetry there. It is like a proper melange. You know, they take the dark, bitter, discarded waste of society's underbelly, and they transform it, blending it into functional, everyday utility. They are the cosmic recyclers.
That is a great way to put it.
But I have to challenge this for a second. If they are constantly internalizing these massive secrets, grinding through these terrifying zero resets, and managing broken, toxic systems all day, what happens to their physical body, the psychological pressure of holding all that in must take a physical toll.
Yeah.
The body keeps the score, right?
It takes a severe somatic toll. In medical astrology, this relentless psychological pressure, this habit of holding in massive amounts of secretive tension, primarily attacks the jaw.
The jaw.
Yes, manifests as severe jaw clenching, dental decay, and chronic TMJ. They are quite literally biting down on their secrets, grinding their teeth as they try to process the hypocrisy of the world.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It is. And anatomically, the energy of this nakshatra also heavily impacts the right thigh and the knees, causing rheumatism and joint issues that physically restrict their movement, mimicking Saturn's restriction.
Which brings us full circle to the ultimate dry irony that we started with. This star is named the 100 Healers. They are the cosmic physicians, the ones extracting flower essences and treating the root software of human trauma. Yet the sources explicitly state that when a Shatabhisha native themselves gets sick, it is a nightmare.
Yes, it is. If an illness starts under this star, or if the native falls ill, it is incredibly bizarre. It is chronic, convoluted, and stubbornly resistant to standard treatments.
So it's a mystery illness every time.
It metaphorically requires 100 doctors to figure out what is wrong with them. They are the absolute worst-case scenario for a conventional 15-minute appointment physician.
That is just hilarious in a dark way. It's the one light, almost comical moment of relief in all this heavy psychology. The world's greatest healer is the medical system's most annoying, impossible patient.
It is ironic, yes.
But why? What is the mechanic behind their illness being so unreadable?
It is because a Shatabhisha illness is rarely just a physical pathogen. It is a healing crisis.
What does that mean?
Because the deity Varuna governs both the cosmic trial and the ultimate cure, their illnesses are often a physical manifestation of a deep-seated karmic or psychological imbalance that has been heavily veiled.
So the veil hides the root cause.
Exactly. A standard physician looks at the physical symptom, the jaw pain or the joint ache.
Yeah.
But the symptom is just the alarm bell ringing outside the empty circle.
Right.
It requires 100 physicians, meaning a vast, multidisciplinary, holistic approach to unravel the layers of psychic tension, trauma, and energetic blockage before they can experience a true breakthrough.
They literally have to become the master of their own void to heal themselves.
Yes, they do.
Which really brings us to the existential core of this whole discussion. We've talked about the bouncer at the club, the crushing zero resets, the addiction risks, the radar technicians, and the jaw tension. If we pull back and look at the overarching human experience, what is the ultimate purpose of this heavy, isolating, yet profoundly necessary earthly journey?
The true mission of Shatabhisha is not to suffer the void.
It's not?
No. The isolation and the 0 point are not punishments. They are a chrysalis.
Yeah.
Their existential purpose is to transform that terrifying inner emptiness into the holistic healing of broken systems.
So the breakdown is the breakthrough.
Exactly. By braving the dark of the midnight sun, by looking directly at the hypocrisy, the waste, and the profound illnesses that the rest of society desperately wants to ignore, they act as the ultimate cosmic architects of restoration. They strip away the illusions of the world so that true foundational healing can begin.
They endure the darkness so they can learn how to fix the broken pieces the rest of us leave behind. That is a heavy, lingering thought to mull over as the sounds of the cafe fade around us. To you listening, consider where in your own life you might need to brave the 0 point, to let a flawed system completely collapse in order to rebuild something structurally sound. There is no third episode.